channel. In today's Friday Night Lights special edition episode, little preview getting started for this Sunday's matchup for the Giants versus the Commanders. First game of the 2025 season. Super jacked up. This is also our opportunity. We're going to see a lot of new faces that will probably have a pivotal part to play moving forward throughout the season, and hopefully well into the next few years. I'm incredibly excited about what this team has to offer. So with that, let's dive into things. I mean, I just got pretty optimistic there right off the bat, but I think one thing that I did want to touch on was Deontay Banks after being drafted in the first round out of Maryland. Was it 2 seasons ago? And then so let's talk about him as he is not starting going into week 1. And let's talk about a couple of reasons for why there. So his rookie season, pretty solid first step into the NFL foray. Then, after that season, they get rid of Wink Martindale, they get rid of McKinney. New coordinator comes in, and the wheels kind of fall off for Deontay Banks as the season progresses. He's not the same guy that he was when they first drafted him, that rookie season. There's a substantial drop-off, and then there's also the attitude part of it as well, as he's not trying, and that shows up clearly on tape. And then when you have guys acting like that at the NFL level, you could see that, coaches don't react to it, they don't appreciate it, and then, they're not afraid to bench you, but they wanted to give him and afford him every single chance and opportunity to be successful. And unfortunately, you saw that in preseason games this season where first team defense is out there for a couple drives. Then they go to the second team defense, but Banks is still out there. And they tried to get him as many reps as possible, but for whatever they saw on film and they broke it down, he just probably didn't take that next step. And for a couple of reasons, I'm glad that they brought in Paulson Adebo and paid him, TBD to see how he looks at CB1. But I'm glad that they did kind of make a move in that realm in the secondary, because if they didn't and were just banking on Banks, pardon that terrible pun, banking on Banks to have a successful season and to get out of that sophomore slump, didn't seem like he did enough this training camp. So having said that, he will not be starting against the Commanders this Sunday. Which, they said he'll play on some third downs, probably when they're in a nickel or dime package, probably dime. So right off the bat, definitely wanted to talk about that. Next up, on a positive note, for the first time in a long time, the Giants actually have a competitive quarterback behind the helm, with Russell Wilson leading this offense. TBD for how long he will be the starting quarterback for. I do think we will see Jackson Dart at some point this season. A lot of people were thinking it might actually be sooner than later, just based on how the first couple of games go. And the Giants do have a hard schedule, but I know the optimistic fan in me thinks, like, what happens if Russell Wilson? I don't want to necessarily say that he finds a fountain of youth here, but what happens if he gets back to a strong form and is able to kind of end his career or just have a successful season and get paid elsewhere after this, right? It's possible. It could be done. But I think it's going to be just so refreshing as Giants fans to see someone throw the ball down the field, to be an actual leader. And he gets a lot of flack for being like this corny, dude, kind of Jesus-y, kind of preachy, in a different style than Jameis's Jesus-y and preachy, which I don't really care about those things. Like, to each their own. I actually, enjoy it. But a lot of people think it's corny and they don't like it for whatever reason. But I think at the end of the day, he is a vocal leader. And it's something that this team, or this offense in particular, really hasn't had in a while. You had a guy in Saquon Barkley who didn't really play every single game, but when he played, he was amazing. And he wasn't on the field leader because he was so good. But they never really rewarded him for that, and obviously went to the Eagles. The rest is history. But they haven't had a leader like even Saquon since he left, over a season ago. And even then, when you're not playing and missing so many games, how much of a leader on the field can you actually be? And from the quarterback position, Daniel Jones was very stoic. He didn't really say much or wear, as much of his frustrations as he probably could have with players, play calling and players, and then himself as well. He seemed very cut from the cloth of Eli in that regard, and it will be interesting to see how this goes once the season starts and we have Russell Wilson and this is his team, it's his offense, forever how long he is successful. And what I like about that is he's at a crossroads in his career where he's going to have to be as put together as strong of week over week games as possible, because if he doesn't, there's two other options behind him. And the thing with this coach right now, Brian Daboll, after having two shitty seasons in a row, is if Russell Wilson isn't successful, and say goes 0 for 4, there's going to be a change because Brian Daboll needs to shake things up and he needs to win. Otherwise, Brian Daboll won't be back next season along with Wilson or whoever else that fails this year. And honestly, that's why it was a good move for the Giants to trade back in and get Dart at the end of the first round. Way less pressure on Dart to be successful. And then he could also learn from guys like Russell Wilson, who is a 10-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, and then Jameis, who in his own right has had his own success, but also been through the NFL gauntlet, media, multiple teams, to see how you be successful in this league. So, the quarterback situation I think will change as the season progresses. It has the last two seasons. 2 seasons ago, back-to-back seasons, you've seen 4 different quarterbacks play. So shout out Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, Mike Lennon, Tim Boyle, and Tyrod Taylor. So next up, I do want to talk about this offense, also the playmakers in this offense. Malik Nabers was kind of banged up a lot this preseason. The only person who is on the actual injury list going into week 1 as doubtful is Andrew Thomas. Nabers is completely clear. They gave him a rest day today. So let's see if he could hit the ground running in Washington on week 1. But he has had nagging injuries throughout this entire preseason. And all of last year, he was fairly shook up, fairly injury prone. So I would love to see him come in as healthy as possible, if it would be a possibility. I'm not exactly sure of that, as he just had the injuries kind of pile up throughout. So having said that, he has the opportunity to be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL this season, especially now that he has an actual quarterback in Russell Wilson. And again, if it doesn't work for Russell Wilson, like, Jameis can throw the ball, as good as anyone, right? He'll throw it as hard as anyone. He'll throw couple of touchdowns, couple of interceptions, and just sling it. And then whatever happens with Dart, eventually maybe he comes in and they have some rapport. But for this game specifically versus the Commanders, it was last year that I believe Nabers really had his coming out party and was kind of like unguardable and looked amazing. Would love to see him take advantage of that again this year. And then other playmakers outside of this, from the wide receiver perspective, we're looking at Wandell, we're looking at Darius Slayton. Want to see them take a couple shots downfield, maybe see High come in the game and they see if they could finally flip a switch for him, or maybe they don't want to waste a play with him and maybe get Slayton involved more a little bit further down the field. And then also at the running backs position, we have Tyron Tracy Jr. and Cam Scatabo. Scatabo, a little dinged up this preseason. Tracy seems completely fine, looked really good in the preseason games, and really excited to see what he could do in his sophomore year. Not too much tread on the tires. Total 1,000 yards, rushing, receiving combined last season. So really want to see what he could build on in year 2. And yeah, and then it's going to be interesting to see who steps up from a tight end perspective. Theo Johnson, been banged up, kind of camp, got hurt a couple games, missed some time last year. How involved is he? How does he look? I think we'll find out and see. Let's just be honest. These tight ends over the last number of years really haven't done all too much and have had much success. So maybe someone steps up, but I guess, the data shows us that no one really is or has. And trust me, this role has been open for the taking for quite some time at this point. Next up, one of the big, key matchups of this game is just Jayden Daniels going into his sophomore season with the Commanders and what he will do versus this defense. Obviously, the Commanders brought in Deebo Samuel, and honestly, I hated him going to the Commanders because Deebo has been one of my favorite players in the entire NFL throughout his tenure on the 49ers, because he does so many good things, and he does them exceptionally well in terms of, they'll line him up at running back, and he would they could run inside zone with him. They'll also get him going on jet sweeps. So I think that was an absolute kind of like no-brainer move, getting someone else in there from a playmaking perspective for the Commanders, to give an extra added veteran in that room. And someone who could, maybe they still have some tread left on the tires to make some explosive plays here or there, which is what they desperately need. Austin Eckler still there at running back. Wasn't that great last season. Brian Robinson was another running back there too that they just traded recently to the 49ers. So it will be interesting how to see, how they work in Christian Rodriguez. And then the other guy was the fantasy football deep meme game has been pumping this guy up like McCourty or McCory. I forget how to say it. What is Billy McCory or something? So maybe you see him get involved as well at some point. And Terry McLaurin also just was holding out for a little bit, signed his long-term deal with the Commanders. So they're gonna they might as well take advantage. They're paying him. And I also have said this a lot in the past, so I'm not trying to sound like I love the Giants. This is Giants YouTube channel, but Terry McLaurin is someone that I deeply respect as a competitor and someone we play against every single year. He plays the game the right way. He's not taunting. He's not talking shit. He just is really good, and I think he seems like a decent dude. So I would, and the Giants for a while didn't know how to stop him. And then it was more recently Jahan Dotson, I think like 2 years ago, really crushed the Giants in both matchups versus them. But he's gone now. I saw him on the field for the Eagles last night. So having said that, I do think, Jayden Daniels going into year 2. The Commanders allowed 50 sacks last season. And it seems like they have made some additions to their offensive line. So hopefully they are a little bit better. And I think they actually took the Giants offensive line coach that we fired, who everyone hated, and immediately they started giving up sacks. So they're going to have their work cut out for them, because that's a great matchup. The Commanders offensive line versus the new and improved and restacked and the most hyped unit that I can remember from a Giants team perspective in quite some time, being that defensive line and edge rushing, especially the edge rushers. Thibodeau coming into a pivotal season for himself, and he always plays really well versus Washington for whatever reason. Daniel Jones did too. I think he was like 6-2 or something like that against Washington. That was like the only games he would win. Dexter Lawrence will be a top I think will be in the MVP conversation. Defensive MVP, defensive player of the year award. If the Giants stack some wins, it will be due to his play. We've seen him take over. I cannot speak more highly of him, especially on this channel where I do like to call out all of the great things that he does. Had the 9 sacks in 12 games last season, so hopefully after his surgery and rehab, he is back to the form that we could see him go into all-time Giant territory here, which I think it is possible, and it's something that could be done. And he was a Gettleman guy, and he it's funny to say Gettleman never did anything right, but also on the D-line is the newest addition, Abdul Carter out of Penn State. Sky's the limit for this guy, and Brian Burns as well. So you can't really account for blocking all 4 of these guys. Someone's going to have one-on-one matchups and going to have to make them pay for that. I really hope this unit can come alive and echo shades of the past of what have made the Giants successful, whether it be Tuck, Strahan, OC, JPP. Yeah, what's up, Omega? How you doing? Would love to just see them kind of get back to our roots in terms of getting to the quarterback and making plays. You see these photos of them, and it brings me back a little bit to a time when the Mets had 5 ace young pitchers, and the only one that panned out was the old guy Bartolo Colon, Syndergaard, Steven Matz, DeGrom, and who else? Matt Harvey, Zach Wheeler. All those guys kind of had, besides DeGrom, mediocre careers and kind of fizzled out. So I don't want this defensive line to see a picture of them if they suck after this year of being Burns, Dexter, Abdul, and Thibodeau of like they didn't do anything. So I think this is a great opportunity on the road to really make an impact on this season, but also get started and set the tone for how the season's going to be, that they will be a top defensive line and rushers in this upcoming season. Went to the last person, went to the game in person, different vibe. Yeah, Omega, I'm just going through some of my notes for the pregame show here. Usually, in years past, I record these videos and then, usually have more of a polish to it and then put in like photos and pictures of players and stuff like that. But I think I do enjoy the live streaming stuff. So glad to hear that you saw the vibe change at the preseason game. I'm going to week 3 versus the Chiefs Sunday Night Football, so pretty pumped about that. And yeah, I'm hoping we're 2-0 going into that game. And could you imagine how hyped that stadium would be for Sunday Night Football versus Mahomes and, Travis Swift there? So I think getting to my next point for this game on Sunday is the biggest factor. I think both of these teams have capable quarterbacks that could throw, but I think what this game is going to be come down to truly is going to be who runs the ball better. Is it the Commanders running the ball down the Giants' throat, as the Giants have not had a good run defense? And think about that. In my opinion, they really haven't had one since Leonard Williams was traded that time. But it makes no sense because we have Dexter, so I guess they're just completely exploiting who's ever next to him, because he is just one man, and then the inside linebackers McFadden and Okereke, which I think very highly of both of them. But for whatever reason, the defenses that they've run over the last few years just don't translate to being able to stop the run. And if the Commanders can find success doing that, running RPOs, it's going to be a long day for the Giants. And I think also vice versa. Sierra and Wilson versus Kelsey and Taylor, love that. I think on the flip side of things, right, if the Giants can run the ball and Russell Wilson doesn't even have to do that much, like obviously it'll open up the play action, right? And Russell Wilson could throw good deep passes. That opens Slayton, it opens Hyatt, it opens Nabers, it opens the ability to go down the field. But it all starts with the offensive line getting some solid blocks up front and moving, the defense a little bit further on the field so Tracy could do his thing, Scotabo could do his thing. And if they could start this game by getting 3-4 yards a clip on runs, it's going to open up the entire offense, and it's also going to make sure that, they can dominate the line of scrimmage. And I think whoever does that and runs the ball from that perspective will have, be able to dictate time of possession and how this game's going to go. Run game sucked during this preseason. I wasn't impressed. Yeah. I mean, it's something that they have to build on. Tracy didn't play too much. There's also base offenses, so they probably didn't want to show too much. So going back to my final thoughts for this one, key players to this game: Nabers versus the Commanders secondary. How will they get him involved for how healthy he is? How will Russell Wilson be able to kind of mesh into and lead this offense for the first time? And then on the other side of things, they'll have Jayden Daniels commanding Deebo Samuel, Austin Eckler, some old guys over there, and now they've recently paid McLaurin to see, what they can do. But if the Giants' defensive line can do and back up all of the hype that they've been awarded so far this season, then this should go the Giants' way and also dictate the tone for going against the Cowboys and then the Chiefs and getting started with a win this season, and then last thing here is just I had the Giants as a 6-point underdog going into this one on the road. I am super pumped about that because I'm obviously taking that game 6 as a lot, or taking those point 6 as a lot. And I think if it does turn into a shootout, the Giants have some weapons to be able to, stand up to that with Nabers and, Tracy or someone else that could step up, maybe even Wandell. So I'm taking the Giants +6, and I got them on the money line. And then, the defense, we will see a lot more from our tight ends play in wide receivers. Yeah, the Giants absolutely love Theo Johnson, who had a weird camp. He was banged up a little bit. And the one guy who looked really good, Dulcich, I don't even know how to say his name, but they put him through waivers to go to the practice squad and got signed by the Dolphins. So they lost him, but he had like 3 touchdown receptions in the preseason. But you know me, I'm a belly bro. Bellinger's still there. He has the opportunity, to get in and make a difference. Fedone also there, and then Theo Johnson, who has a starting job, and let's see how he looks in his sophomore season. Defense looking legit. I think it's to be seen there. I just had my whole rant about the defensive line or the edge rushers. They have the ability to be some of the best in the league. Just a matter of they step up and get it done. And I hope they do, because I don't want to see them come back to these videos later on this year and be like, damn, I can't believe I thought these guys were going to be that good, and they're just so overhyped and didn't really do anything. And yeah, let me know. I'll be doing, I don't know, if this live stream version came out just as good as some of the, pre-recorded and edited ones that I've done in years past, I might just continue with this moving forward so we can make it a little bit more conversational at the end of it. We'll talk and, hit me back up. I'll probably do a recap video, which is kind of been my bread and butter for the videos on Sunday night after the game. If you guys made it this far, thank you for watching. So pumped about Sunday. Let's get a win, Star 1-0. It's been a while since the Giants have done that. I think we have a chance at least at the number 2 spot in the division. Yeah, last thing I'll say about that, and then I got to run. Eagles, Super Bowl hangover. Washington, Jayden Daniels, sophomore slump. And 3, Cowboys just traded Micah Parsons, and Jerry Jones has no clue what the hell he's doing. We're due. All right. Peace.